The devastating cycle of flood and drought is all too common throughout the entire region.
The changing precipitation patterns, I think, are the most dramatic aspect. More intensive precipitation, more concentrated, then we have more extended periods of drought. So the predictability has changed dramatically.
75-year-old Chuang Norfel remembers a time when the weather was more predictable and the glaciers were visible.
People are very worried about the vanishing glaciers. Farmers fear they might have to migrate one day. An example of the rapidly retreating glaciers is the Khardungla Glacier. I remember when we could actually walk on the glacier, but now there is not even a single trace of ice. It's an obvious sign of climate change.
Leh receives only 3 inches of rain per year, and farmers rely heavily on the glacial meltwater to irrigate their crops in the spring. But with the low-altitude glaciers gone, it is early summer before water flows from the higher altitudes. Too late for the local farmers. An engineer by trade, Norfel wondered how he could help the farmers of Leh. His solution? To manipulate nature into forming artificial glaciers. During the fall season, Norfel builds large ponds on the side of the mountain that will receive little sunlight in the upcoming winter months. As winter approaches, he diverts stream water from the high-altitude glaciers into the man-made ponds, where it is shielded from the sun's heat. As winter snows begin to accumulate, Norfel's strategically placed ponds begin to freeze. Here, the artificial glaciers can remain frozen throughout the winter months. It's like a giant ice cube that contains enough water to irrigate 200 hectares of crops. Norfel's creative engineering has now replaced what nature can no longer provide. By spring, the artificial glaciers begin to thaw, releasing precious water to the farmers below. It is now the harvest season, and Norfel pays a visit to the farmers of Stakmo. They are reaping the bounty of a bumper crop of barley.
I was extremely happy today when I saw farmers harvesting the crops that I helped them to grow. It gives me great satisfaction that my hard work is turning out to be fruitful. We grow the best barley in the world. It is our life source, but our crops cannot exist without water. Mr. Norfel first built the artificial glacier as an experiment. When it actually worked, word spread among the villagers.
Sonam Deshan and his family are harvesting their best potato crop in years because of the water supplied by the artificial glaciers. But he admits that the idea seemed odd at first.
When Mr. Norfel first attempted to build the artificial glacier, we thought he was crazy. But once we started getting water from it, then we believed him. Now, we are very grateful to Mr. Norfel. We will not be able to survive without the water from Norfel's glaciers. We are farmers and we depend on our crops. There are no other job options for us.
Norfel has become famous in his native Ladakh and is affectionately known as the Iceman. Each artificial glacier only costs $7,000 and more than a dozen have been built. Costs are kept low because they use locally found materials and the villagers help build them.
I'm very proud to be working on the artificial glacier. Water is very precious to farmers like us. Now we can grow more crops and I can provide more for my children.
I want the villagers to be capable of building artificial glaciers on their own so they can be more independent. If they need repairing or a new one needs to be built, they can do it without me.
Buoyed by his success with the region's farmers, Norfel has turned his attention to creating reservoirs of drinking water for local villagers. This is Norfel's latest creation, a man-made reservoir that will provide water for this drought-stricken region. Soon, water will be delivered directly to 100 families, ending their daily commute to local streams. When Norfel gazes across the valley, where he has lived for 75 years, he is grateful that he has made a difference in the lives of his fellow villagers.
I know that I'm only one person and I cannot stop climate change alone. But I'm very hopeful that if we dedicate ourselves to adaptive solutions like creating artificial glaciers, this will lessen the worries of the people.
Because of the ingenuity and dedication of the Iceman, the people of the Ladakh region are able to see a future where water still flows from the mountains, a future of bountiful crops grown on family farms. Bangladesh isn't often associated with the towering Himalayan mountains. With an average elevation of just 10 meters above sea level, it's mostly known as a country of rivers.
Bangladesh is a country of waters. People's life and livelihood is synchronized with the climatic seasons and their river.
The rivers are its economic heart, but the Himalayan meltdown that is taking place thousands of miles away is having serious repercussions on Bangladesh's rivers and its people.
Bangladesh is, the classic climate change victim. It's being hit at both ends, so to speak. It's being hit by the ice melt, and then it's being hit by the rising sea levels.
Despite Bangladesh's relatively low carbon footprint, the effects of climate change are having a dramatic effect on its 150 million citizens. Increased flooding and droughts, cyclones and erosion are washing away their income and food security.
This is a challenge for the country because it's a crisis. Bangladesh become one of the most vulnerable countries.
56 major river systems, including the Ganges, Brahmaputra and Meghna, originate in the Himalayas, coursing their way through Bangladesh, carrying sediment and meltwater. As glacial runoff flows from the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal, the increased volume and velocity of the water becomes an insidious destructive force. Riverbanks collapse and once productive farmland is swallowed up. Sirajganji is one of hundreds of villages that line the country's rivers. As long as they have land, they can raise livestock, grow their own food, and provide for themselves. But their way of life is literally eroding away.
From here to up to 1 kilometer away, there is land and there are lots of houses. People have cattle, people have vegetable field. Everything has eroded in only just last 3 months.
I lost it all, my farm and all my belongings. The river destroyed it all. I'm moving to the other side of the river. Maybe it'll be safer over there.
The rising river will swallow this building in less than 1 week. Entire settlements vanish in a matter of days, and people are forced to migrate elsewhere. The residents of Sirajganji are busy disassembling their homes and businesses before the river claims them. The effects of the Himalayan meltdown are forcing thousands of people to flee their farms in the countryside to the crowded inner city of Dhaka. They struggle to make a new life amid the chaos of one of the world's most populated cities. 40-year-old Morsheda Begum remembers a time when she and her husband could live off the land.
My husband is sick and cannot work, so I must sew handscarves to earn money. Our life in the country was hard, but we did not have a landlord and could provide for ourselves. Now our rent is half of our monthly income. Life is very hard in the slums.
6 months ago, 60-year-old Mahmoud Haider was a farmer. Today he is one of the thousands of rickshaw drivers eking out a living in Dhaka.
I came to work in Dhaka because my land was flooded. I had no other choice.
Ironically, the same mountain-fed rivers that are causing the erosion also carry tons of sediment that can help people stay on their land. Along Bangladesh's rivers, people are adapting to the erosion by reclaiming the river sediment and creating higher ground, one bucket at a time. It's a race against the river, but one that these people hope they will win, so that they can continue to provide for themselves. Other communities are building mounds made from river mud that will soon support crops and fruit trees. While collecting silt from the rivers is helpful for inland communities, solving the erosion problems along Bangladesh's vast coastline requires a different type of solution. Kukri Makri is an island community of 4,500 families accustomed to cyclones and monsoon floods. But now they have the added burden of increased river flow from the glaciers and rising sea levels.
Coastal area is the most vulnerable areas in Bangladesh. And if there is vegetative shelter belt, there would be minimum flow of water during tidal surges. The forest will protect it.
At low tide, the solution to the island's erosion problems is visible. These are the roots of mangrove trees, which are native to the coastal area. The muddy delta is an ideal habitat for the trees. Their roots act like giant nets, catching the sediment from the river and holding it in place. The more trees there are, the more soil stays attached to the island. But there are not enough trees to ensure the island's long-term safety, so they are growing more of them. The United Nations Development Programme, with financing from the Least Developed Countries Fund of the United Nations Climate Change Convention, is supporting an innovative coastal afforestation program. This program is designed to counter effects of sea level rise while maintaining the sensitive ecosystem and creating economic opportunities for coastal communities. Nearly everyone on the island is involved in the project. The nurseries are tended to daily by the very people who will benefit from the trees. More than 2 million new mangrove trees are being cultivated from seedlings, each one under the tender care of the islanders. These workers are preparing a field for planting a new batch of seedlings. They work with a sense of urgency. Without the mangrove roots, the land would likely be engulfed by the river during the next flood or cyclone. Sherman Acasta is a mother of 3. She was born on Kukri Makri, and her home sits among the mangrove trees. She understands the connection between the forest's survival and her children's well-being.
The trees are the life of our community. There is no embankment here along the river, so when the tidal flow comes, these trees will protect us. If the trees did not exist, my family would have to move to the city. Life along the coast would be totally impossible without the trees.
We have conducted a number of project awareness meetings at Chowk Kukri Mukri. In the meeting, the local communities told me that they will never cut the forest because forest is saving them from all types of natural calamities.
The roots of the mangrove trees hold together not only the soil and sediment of Bangladesh, they enable millions of Bengalis living along the riverbanks to stay rooted in their communities. China, one of the most notable emerging economies on the planet. A global manufacturing and economic powerhouse. The Himalayas feed the Yellow, the Yangtze, and other rivers that weave through China's vast territories, fueling its vibrant expansion. While commerce has transformed life in the urban city, here on the rural Tibetan plateau, life remains much the same as it was centuries ago. But for nomadic herdsmen like Tsering Dorje, it is a way of life that is quickly disappearing, along with the glaciers.
The glaciers are retreating and the water level in rivers is dropping too. Grass is not growing as well as before. Many female yaks used to have calves every year. Now, some don't even give birth for years.
The once fertile plains that his yaks feed upon are drying up. Grasslands are becoming deserts. The yak and sheep herds are half the size they were just a few years ago. For the indigenous people of the Tibetan Plateau, disappearing glacier-fed rivers are threatening an ancient way of life. China's leading climatologist Yao Tandong estimates that the glaciers that feed the Yangtze, Yellow, Mekong and Brahmaputra rivers have shrunk 7% over the past 40 years, and the rate is accelerating.
When these glaciers are melting, it means that the water in form of capital is diminishing. We are living on the capital of the next generation also.
Climate change is only one factor contributing to the Himalayan meltdown. Thousands of kilometers from the Tibetan Plateau, soot or black carbon gets into the air and is blown across Asia into the Himalayas. There it is deposited on the continent's glaciers. Instead of reflecting the sun's heat as they once did, the glaciers are now absorbing it.
Black carbon is a factor which is contributing substantially to glacier and ice melting.
We need to understand what is happening in our ecosystems much better. All of us must move on the path of a low carbon footprint.
China and India have begun to address the problem. Though these developing economies contribute to growing carbon emissions, they are striving towards solutions. China now produces and uses more renewable energy than any country in the world. On the streets of New Delhi, Beijing, and Shanghai, government policies promote the use of clean-burning, compressed natural gas vehicles. Finding ways to reduce our carbon footprint and adapt to nature's changing climate is a shared and urgent challenge. Throughout Asia, people are awakening to the deep connection that exists between their actions and the climate.
Do we still have the link between ablation and...
Not surprisingly, the citizens, scientists and governments of Asia are discovering a common purpose, discovering a new sense of cooperation.
As individual institutions, our resources are limited. But through international institutions like ICMOD, we can pool our resources and help each other. So international cooperation is very important.
We need to bring about greater regional cooperation, simply because ecosystems don't recognize geographical boundaries.
From the valley fields of India to the mangrove forests of Bangladesh, In the mountains of Nepal and Bhutan and on the Tibetan plateau, people are awakening to the parallel between the environment and their survival.
If we allow that environment to be destroyed, the human species will go away.
For the next generation, I'm not so optimistic unless there are dramatic changes.
We've actually destroyed our planet without even thinking about it. So think about what we can achieve if we actually get together and focus our energy on protecting our environment.
Mahatma Gandhi said, you have to be the change agent that you want to preach.
We want less talk and more action. More than anything else, it will require political will for people to come together and start addressing this issue.
Indeed, change has come to the Himalayan glaciers. And now it is up to the people and governments of Asia to adapt to these changes. The manner in which they adapt is as diverse as the millions of people who inhabit the region. From the towering heights of the Himalayas to the coastal lowlands, solutions will be found. Some will find answers through research and the sharing of information. Many will rise to the challenge with physical determination and the sweat of their brow. Yet others will seek spiritual guidance. No matter how they choose to adapt to the Himalayan meltdown, the citizens and governments of Asia must recognize that climate change doesn't stop at borders. From the mountains to sea, we must adapt to the changes if we are to survive.